You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans, just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting distracted by all the national sports media nonsense. We are diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the draft dreams and drama now of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, jump on over to YouTube, type in Packers Talk Network, hit search, you'll find our channel, hit subscribe, hit the little bell next to it, hit all the buttons. None of them cost you any money, and you could be done by now. It's that quick. So it really helps us out a lot, helps us get seen by other Packers fans if you so choose to support us in that way. And, if you guys really have a fun time with us, bring a friend, come hang out Monday nights at 9:30 with us, and let's talk some Pack. Right now, we've got plenty of free agency news to unpack. As we said last week, of course, as soon as the show would end the next morning, you would get your breaking big signing at 6 a.m. And so we did. And that happened. And then we got a few more. And we're going to go through all of them. So let's take a look at these guys tonight. Who did the Packers add? Is it enough? Do they have to do something else before the draft, or are they sitting good going into the draft? What do we think? There's going to be another wave of free agency after the draft. There usually is. Not nearly as exciting as the first round, of course, but plenty of team building opportunities, I should say, still ahead of us. And then we're gonna talk a little bit of the running backs and the quarterbacks in this draft class here. It's an interesting class for those positions. Quarterbacks don't look like they usually do. Running backs looking pretty good, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Got a few of them to keep an eye on. But first, let's also take care of some business here. Our show is once again sponsored by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks tickets, Brewers tickets, Summerfest tickets. If that's what you're headed for this summer, you can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Remember, support all those local businesses, Wisconsin and otherwise. Tim, good evening, sir. How we doing?
Good evening. Doing good. We had some new additions to the team to talk about tonight, so I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, man. Anytime we're talking about adding players to the Packers roster, I'm in. Let's have fun. I love this season. It's kind of like, I don't know if you can equate it to Christmas. Christmas is pretty exciting, but it's like that. There's surprises around every corner. Hopefully it's good. Sometimes you get underwear and socks, and you just got to deal with that.
That was last year at Hobbs and Banks. That was dirty underwear and dirty socks.
Sheesh. Shots fired. But hey, David Bakhtiari agreed with you. So
yeah, and Goody did too. He just cut Hobbs after 1 year. So admitting your mistakes, at least on one of the two.
Yeah. No, it's good. We've criticized GMs in the past of holding on to their guys too long, not admitting their mistakes. I don't think anybody expected him to outright cut Hobbs or Banks, though it is understandable.
Certainly.
I was surprised by the all-out cut, but certainly, you want to admit that mistake. Don't make yourself look foolish,
Yeah, I think it's a good move. Like I would have been fine if they cut Banks too, but I guess once he kind of got healthy late in the year, he played a little better. Like you could kind of see he was turning it around. But he did not have a good year overall, Banks. If he can be healthy and just be solid for them, then I'm okay with that. But yeah, the Hobbs move blew up in their face. He was a guy that they thought could play outside cornerback after not doing much of that with the Raiders. He was a nickel corner, and he had injuries with the Raiders, and he came to the Packers and, right away in camp gets hurt and was hurt pretty much throughout the year. And when he was available and on the field, he showed that he can't play outside corner well. So it was a big mistake. They missed on that. If people want to kill him about it, I get it, but it's rare where he's really missed on free agents like that.
Right.
his record's pretty damn good. And you see around the league, there's free agents every year that teams bomb out on. And there's a lot of guys that just signed big contracts last week that will be available at the end of 2026 season or at the end of 2027 season because they didn't live up to it and they're getting cut. So the Packers don't miss often in free agency, but they missed last year. And that's part of the reason why they went into this offseason needing cornerbacks and needing offensive linemen is because they missed on those ones so badly. But at least they saw their mistake in Hobbs and moved on.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan, you got to be celebrating that, because again, it's I think it's uncommon for a GM to admit they're wrong that quickly. But the difference between the two, Banks and Hobbs, you hit it. You got to see they're both injured, right? You both have the benefit of the doubt from injury, fine, but then you got to see him somewhat healthy, and what did you get from that? I think they saw what they got from Hobbs. They saw what they got from Banks, and I think they saw from Banks, okay, this guy can still be the guy that we signed last year. Unfortunate injury, whatever the other circumstances may be. They decide to keep him around. He agrees to a restructuring. I think that happened, right?
Well, no, they just kind of moved his money. Like he's still getting the same amount of money. It wasn't a pay cut or anything like that. And they actually, future years, they increased his cap number, which I thought was strange. So he very well might be here for at least 2 more years, where they probably could have not done that and went into 2026 as kind of a, make it or break it year for Banks.
Yeah. Now, so that's, we'll see how that plays out. They clearly were okay with keeping Banks because they did, right? And, initially I think, well, all right, you need the depth at O-line. Maybe he's not even a starter. Maybe you draft somebody that beats him out or Belton beats him out. And then you cycle out his contract before those things hit. I don't know. But then you look at Hobbs, it's like, well, the corner group is kind of the same. You still need the depth. It's not like he was the worst guy in the room. But they decided to move on from him. So, they know something about the players. They know something about the guys in the room. We only get to know the names and the stats and all the stuff that's on the paper. But, I just thought it may be overstated, but I really was like, oh, good job, Goot, for admitting you were wrong and moving on quickly. Don't let this, drag out in the salary cap and take up space that other people should be taking. And I think that's a sign of a good GM. It may be one of those things where it's kind of hard to celebrate, cutting a guy or whatever it may be. But at the same time, it's like, hey, like there's a lot of GMs around the league that aren't making that move. They're just going to eat that, and they're going to sit on that and they're going to waste a roster spot on a guy they don't believe in. And I do applaud the move. I really do. And then you've got some of the additions though, right? So we've got the first one, like we said, the first one at 6 a.m. Tuesday morning after we got done. St. Juiced. Is it Juiced?
Yeah.
It's Juiced, right? St. Juiced.
St. Juiced, yeah.
We get ourselves a cornerback, so swapping Hobbs for St. Juiced. And I think that's an upgrade. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, St. Juiced, he's supposed to be one of the best, anything like that. He doesn't look to me like a guy who's going to have a, CB1 type ceiling in the league. He could maybe be CB1 on the team, but you probably don't want him to be, right? You probably rather somebody else be CB1 than him. So a great depth piece, I think. I don't think you're mad about it if he's your CB2. But I don't think he's like an all-pro type guy. I don't think he's going to be, the guy that it's like, hey, he's leading that position. I think you might be finding that guy in the draft. So we've got St. Juiced, we've got Javon Hargrave, and we have a returner. So we got Sky Moore, which I was actually pretty impressed with that signing. I didn't even think about Sky Moore being out on the market as a returner because, I think of him as a receiver, and I just kind of closed my mind to free agent receivers. But I thought that was an excellent move. What do you think? Which one of the three is your favorite so far?
That's a good question. So I like all the moves that they made. I'm not saying that they're, going to be these huge upgrades to the team, but it made sense for like what they did. They got depth at positions of need, and they can go into the draft now where you don't have to take with your first pick a cornerback or a defensive tackle. You can, and that's great. And they're going to take those positions, and there's still positions of need, but you raise the floor there. The St. Juste one is pretty cool because your depth is just better. Like you're better at cornerback. He shouldn't be a starter necessarily. He'll come in there and compete, but he's a good rotational piece. Like where if you need him to come in and start for a few games because of injury, because of somebody else not playing well, I think he can give that to you. He had a really nice bounce back year with the Chargers. Fit their scheme a lot better than what he had done in Washington as his first contract. They were asking him to play a lot more man coverage. It seems like he's better in zone coverages. But he's all over the ball. Like he'll get in there. He had a ton of pass breakups. And last season he played over 300 special team snaps. So you're going to get that too, which helps your special teams. I just think it raises the bar. So like now you get an injury and you're not like one or two injuries away from Bo Melton having to play cornerback for you. He never did last year,
Right.
or Kamal Hayden, but like it just improves your depth. And now I think cornerback, based on what's out there right now, maybe somebody, becomes available through a roster cut or a trade or something like that. But to me, with the guys that are out there right now, there's nobody worth them bringing in. So you tack it in the draft, and hopefully they take like 2 corners, but your depth's improved. St. Juste comes in. He's already a better tackler than any of the quarterbacks on the roster. I think he gives you some, he's a pure outside corner. He's not going to play nickel. Like Hobbs' best spot is probably nickel, but they have a nickel in Bullard. And Hobbs showed last year he's probably not that good outside. Plus he gets hurt. St. Juste has been a guy that's been pretty durable and he can play outside. So, and at least improves your depth. Now go attack cornerback in the draft. And then Sky Moore was pretty cool. I did not expect them to get a return man, especially that early in free agency. I'm hoping this one sticks. I mean, they went out last year and about this time last year and signed McCole Hardman, and then he never made the roster, right? He made those 2 mistakes in the first preseason game, and that was pretty much it for him. Maybe Sky Moore can be that guy that they actually keep on the roster as a return man because he did a great job in San Francisco last year, and he could return both punts and kickoffs. So having that dual threat, being able to do both areas of it, I think is really nice. Yeah, he's a little bit smaller at receiver than they typically like, but he does have the pedigree of being a 2nd-round pick with the Chiefs. I think he's got a chance at returner, but it's all going to depend on the numbers there because right now it looks like they're pretty much set at receiver, but if they go and they draft one, who's that bumping off the roster? And it could be Sky Moore. But if he's able to show that he can help at least a little bit at receiver and be really good at returns, which honestly, like McCall Hardman didn't do that last year. He had that first preseason game and he made mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately that's what cost him it. But if Moore can come in there and show that he can do that, maybe they keep him. Now, I don't think he's assured of making the roster in any way, but it's at least a really good sign for their special teams that they went out so early in first week of free agency and signed a guy who's a return man. Like maybe this is a change. And he certainly looked good doing it last year at the 49ers. And then the Hargrave thing, I think we touched on Hargrave a little bit last week. That was a lot of people had that rumor out there that they were interested once he was getting cut because of his connections with Jonathan Gannon from Philly. I still think he's got something left as a pass rusher, and he did pretty well as a pass rusher in Minnesota. Where he struggled, there was more like run defense. He didn't really fit that scheme as well. He's a up the field defensive tackle, like get off the ball, attack the backfield, go after the quarterback. You don't want him playing too much nose. You don't want him in there. His rundowns aren't going to be as good, but I think he's still got a lot of juice left as a pass rusher. So him and Wide inside could be really good and really disruptive inside. I know he's a little bit older, but I still think he's got something left in the tank. And like we talk about it all the time, like whenever you can add a pass rusher, add a pass rusher. Like if you think you have enough pass rushers, add another pass rusher because you don't have enough. And that's what he is. So I like that move too. So yeah, which one am I most excited about? I probably Hargrave to see what he can do inside, see how disruptive he can be against the pass and the different ways that Gannon can draw things up for him and get him one-on-ones, because once Parsons is there outside rushing, Hargrave's going to get some one-on-ones inside, right? Like he's not going to get the attention. And so looking at his track record with Gannon in Philly, he was really good in Philly. And I'm not saying he's going to be on that level. It's been some years now. He's a little older, but I think he can be close to that. And I think he can give you some juice inside. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. But I think all three of the signings make a lot of sense for each position that they're adding to. And it just kind of like raises the floor for where they're at. And it doesn't box them into, having to make that first pick at cornerback or at defensive tackle.
Yeah, I really think that's, as fans, we like to look at it as like filling needs and going and get the best guy and all that kind of stuff. And I really think that it seems like the front office is more motivated around flexibility, right? It's like, well, we'll get this guy. And if that's all we've got, all right. But, this gives us the ability to say we'd rather go here or there when the time comes, whether that's a free agent or a draft position. Now you've got depth back on the D line that you lost. You trading away Wooden. You've got depth back in the cornerback room that you lost when you let go of Hobbs, which I'm sure they knew they were going to do. I don't think that letting go of Hobbs was like a impulsive thing. You know what I mean? So,
No.
You give yourself that flexibility. You're not like desperate at any position. You got a few re-signings that you make with Ryan and you got Banks still there. And, so the O-line's not in dire straits, right? But you do need more depth at all of those positions. And then, the return position, I think that's another one where, sure, Sky Moore is a good solution. And if you don't add another receiver to the room, he can probably make the team, and contribute. But if you draft somebody who's also a good returner, well, let him beat out Sky Moore in camp. It's not the end of the world if he gets beat out in camp. It's probably better for you, right? And it doesn't cost you a lot. So, yeah, I think all of their moves did exactly that, gave them flexibility. I also think, and I've said this a lot before, I think that tips their hand on what they're prioritizing in the draft. So now, and specifically, I would look at cornerback and D line, not so much returner. I think that was truly a depth or, a flexibility move. But corner and D line, I think, watch for those to be the first two positions picked in the draft. That's what, and I don't know which order it would be, but I think that's kind of the point, is for them to say, like, they're looking at that number 52 going, there's probably a couple D linemen and a couple of corners we'd like to have there, and we'll get into those whenever we get to the position groups, but there really are. I think there really are several options that are going to be available at 52 in both of those position groups that would be great additions for the Packers that they'll probably want. So, if your team don't trade back, it may not be the right position to be in, because usually when that happens, they're willing to go back 4, 5 to 10 spots to say, look, there's at least 5 guys there right now we would take. We move back a few spots, we're guaranteed to get one of them, and so that would be one thing. If you are pro trade back and get a couple more picks or get a little bit more value, I'd say that seems like a good possibility just based on the circumstances. They may like a guy more than the rest of the group, right? I mean, that happens too, where you get to that point and the guy that you didn't think would get there falls to you and it's a no-brainer. So now you're not necessarily looking at the rest of your board going, we like all of these guys. You're going, we didn't even think we'd have a shot at this guy. We can't wait to get to that pick and put the pick in. So in that case, you would not trade down. But yeah, I like it. I like what they've done so far. I mean, they're not winning any championships right now. This isn't like a Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney type free agency, but I do like it. I think that they've gotten some serviceable guys that, at the very least, they get beat out in camp by better competition. But I think if that happens again, the Packers are on the winning end of that, because these aren't slouches that they've signed. At least we thought the same thing about Banks and Hobbs last year too. So from what we can see,
I think these are pieces like that fit the puzzle a little better. Like you know what you're getting in Hargrave, St. Juste. You don't have that expectation with Hobbs with the bigger contract, like expecting him to come in and be a starter. Like St. Juste, if he starts, okay, he's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to beat out Valentine or Nixon. More likely it would be Valentine. and probably beat out whatever rookies they draft. But like he gives you improved depth and somebody that like when injuries strike, he can go in there and you're not panicking. Like this guy's played a lot of NFL snaps at cornerback, and then he's going to help your special teams. So yeah, I feel pretty good about it. There's still a lot of work to be done, but it makes sense for like what they've done. It makes sense for who they've retained, and I think everybody who's left, like we were expecting that, and I think that's like the bigger thing too is like it's concerning in a way. Like you look at it, and all these guys left, right, and way more guys left than what they brought in, and you look at all the snaps and a lot of starting experience with Quay Walker, Rasheed Walker, Romeo Dobbs. Like they started a lot of games, played a lot of snaps, and it's like where are you making that up at? But they already had built-in replacements for those guys, and we don't know what Jordan Morgan's going to be at left tackle. We don't know what Matthew Golden's going to be at receiver, but you took those guys for a reason, and now's their chance to get the playing time at the positions that they're supposed to be at and seeing what they can do. So you got to find out. And, Quay Walker, they went out before he even left. They knew he was leaving. They went out and got his replacement. Will Zaire Franklin be better? We don't know. We'll see in this defense. But like they're not going into the draft. And I felt like a lot of times under Ted Thompson, and I don't want to, Ted was a really good GM, but I just felt like one of the weaknesses was like they would lose guys in free agency, not add free agents, bring them in because he just avoided free agency. And you would go into the draft and be like, you have to add guys at this position. And like, it was just too many positions. And you get to the end of it and like, here they are going into, end of training camp and they're starting some 5th or 6th round pick out there. And you're like, he shouldn't be starting like, or playing major. He's not ready, but you have to, because you won't bring in outside players from other teams. Whereas Brian will go out and he'll bring in guys and allow
he specifically
the
addresses holes, which I think that, not all GMs will admit to that, right? They always try to do this best player available, just trying to improve the team thing. And you see the holes and he plugs them, man. I mean, like we were saying with Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs, like safety was a just perpetual problem. And he said, fine, fix it. Put the best one on the market in there, draft a whole bunch of them. That's solved, and so I love that he does that. And, we are seeing that there's a lot of, it's not even kind of delayed replacement, right? It's, we know we're losing Quay. Let's go get Franklin. And we can split hairs all offseason about if Franklin will be better than Quay. Oh, he had a terrible PFF score, 2025, whatever. The guy was just elected to be on the board for the Players Association. Like he's a leader. Like you only get elected to that kind of stuff in those positions if you're a leader. And that, so at the very least, you brought a fantastic example into your locker room, which I think is that's a positive. Not to say that Quay was a bad example, right? It's just you didn't lose ground there. If anything, you only gained ground in the leadership department. So that was something that I said a lot about Quay Walker, because I liked Quay Walker. I was rooting for him. He's very athletic, and you could kind of see the upside, and I don't think he ever really materialized completely into what you thought he could be. But I liked the guy. I had hopes for the guy, and it seemed like the coaches really preferred him as the quarterback of the defense, which tells me that there's some leadership qualities there. He's a good communicator. He's got his ducks in order. He knows what's going on, and he knows, what to do in different situations. That's important. And it feels like they prioritized that characteristic in their acquisition of Franklin and replacing Quay. So I that's what I would say. I wouldn't look at the player to player replacement. I would look more at like what happens around that player this season versus what was happening around Quay Walker before. We'll see. We'll be able to see that. Edgerrin Cooper is going to be a good indicator of that, right? Does he get better this season? Because you were expecting a big breakthrough season for him last season. He didn't quite materialize into that. I wouldn't say he had a bad season. It was just not what the upside you'd hoped for. But now I think with Franklin, his part of his job is going to be getting Cooper in the best position to be successful, right? You got Micah on one hand that just turn that guy loose, whichever gap you're sending him in, send him there. Micah doesn't have to be complicated. He's just a physical athletic problem for anybody who's across from him. Um, but with the rest of the defense, you got to make sure these guys are in position. You got Hargrave. His big complaint about Minnesota is he wasn't used properly. So how do you use him versus how do you line him up next to Wyatt, who's doing what? And those kinds of things are the things that you want Franklin to be negotiating because he can see from his middle position, like the line, he can hear the quarterback calling protections. He can see protections. He can get those guys in the right gaps. So that's, for me, what you're wanting from that middle linebacker position. So hopefully we see that and we see Edge get a little bit more of that Sam opportunity to maybe rush the passer a little bit or just put his athleticism on display and make plays. But that was what I guess that was a long way of agreeing with you in that, I really like to see that Goot is replacing guys, right? We lose guys, we replace guys. And very, very important. And I think that maybe we probably appreciate that because of the years through Ted Thompson. Again, no shade, all respect to the late great Ted. He did, after all, bring another Super Bowl back to Titletown. But yeah, there were some rough years there where you're going, oh man, like, come on, can we please, just one?
Right.
I just want one. You did so good with Charles Woodson. Can we do that again? Just find another one.
It was
tough.
It was tough. But Goody, at least, he went out there and added a cornerback. And yeah, they still need to add more cornerbacks, but now you have 3 veterans there. So when you draft a guy or 2, however many they come out of the draft with, like, you don't have to rush them if they're not ready. If they're ready, cool, play them, right? But if they're not ready, at least they have 3 veterans ahead of them. And I think St. Juste kind of raises the floor for him at cornerback position. And so it makes sense. Is this a difference maker that they signed? No, they didn't sign any difference makers. They didn't sign anybody that's like going to put them over the top, but they signed guys who are still good football players who can add to your team, who are going to have a role in your team. And, at positions of need. So that's what you need. And we'll see, what happens in the draft. We'll see who else they may sign here before the draft. And then, of course, after the draft, there's always guys that become available. There's still a long way to go. So, like, they definitely have areas of need that they need to address beyond just adding draft picks. But I think it makes sense what they did. And they had a plan all along, which is why Matthew Golden's here and why Jordan Morgan and some of the younger players that have been sitting, and now you're going to get opportunities. So it's their time to show us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's some good comments in the chat too about that. Like, so I don't know exactly which one I want to grab. I'll try to, but the general sentiment being that, yeah, there were some mistakes made last offseason, right? And we kind of talked about that, and signing Banks wasn't maybe the best approach, and forcing Elgton to go into center, and so, like, my thought there, and again, it works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. It seemed to me like what they're doing, and that they're doing it again, is trying to give themselves maximum flexibility. Here it is. So our buddy, our Showers, I'm glad to see you guys tonight. Yeah, he said, yeah, paying a guard like that when you were set on playing Elgton out of position was arrogant and stupid. I think in hindsight, that's easy to see. And not necessarily like taking shots saying like, Monday morning quarterbacking, but in the moment, what it seemed like they were trying to do is they had this weird revolving door at right guard, not sure who it's going to be. Then you got, you got Jenkins, really reliable guard, but you don't know who's going to play center because you're letting your center go. Jenkins could be a great center because he's played center before. So it's like, all right, well, let's bring a guy in. And then we got 2 really good interior, offensive linemen, whether they're center or guard. And then, again, it gives you the flexibility. Let's see what the guy like Ryan, let's see how he does. And, who do you draft? You draft Belton. So you kind of throw all these names into the room and see how it goes. And it turns out you're right, Showers. That's exactly how it went. And it does seem in hindsight a little bit like a bad play, a little stupid and arrogant. But
yeah,
when you're not just trying to solve the problem at the position and you're just throwing your flexibility at it, that's a potential outcome. That's part of the risk of doing it that way. And I agree. And we've said this before this offseason already, Tim, that it'd be nice now if we stop drafting guys for maximum versatility and maybe draft a few who are just really stinking good at one job. Like go out and get a dude that is just a road grader. Get a guy who you're going to plug into guard for the next 10 years. Go find that guy. The guy that's going to get a 15-yard penalty when the other team bounces your quarterback's head off the ground. Go find that guy. Okay, we just need to plug him in to have a bad attitude against the team he's playing against and just be there all the time. And he's just going to beat the hell out of everybody he plays against. Find that guy, put him at guard, leave him there. The rest of the situation, or maybe, swap that out for center because you might still need a center. Ryan's not the worst, not the best, but you might have one of these guys fall to you in the draft that could be a damn good center. But yeah, like that's that. I'm looking at that now. And again, last offseason, I agreed with what they were doing, man. I agreed with the whole let's get our best 5, right? Like, all right, well, if you got 7 guys that you think could make up your best 5, your odds are pretty good. And I feel like that's what they thought. And then you get down to the brass tacks of it and the actual execution on the field, it doesn't look so great. Because you got Morgan bouncing around everywhere. You got injuries that always will factor in. Then you got to solve problems you didn't think you had to solve, like the right tackle. And so it just becomes kind of a cluster when you just throw a bunch of pieces into a room and hope that the best thing comes out instead of treating each of those positions. There's 5 of them, like 5 individual positions. So I just wanted to give a little bit of credit to that criticism there.
No, and I think you're right. The Jenkins thing. So Jenkins's play had already started to fall off at guard in 2024. Like he wasn't the same player at guard. But I didn't really like them moving him to center. However, I thought he would play better than he did. He wasn't very good at center. Sean Ryan was better at center. So I didn't like it. The Banks signing, he was kind of okay in San Francisco. And to pay him the contract that he did was just highly questioned. And we saw what happened, but even before having the season he did, it was really surprising. But Jenkins falling off like that, like he did at center, and just not fitting there, really hurt him. And I'm really with you as far as like, can we just put guys at their best position and let them play instead of like we're gonna have versatility and you got to play 2 or 3 positions and we want our best 5 no matter where they're gonna like. That's great and all. But your offensive line struggled last year. It's really struggled the last 2 years or been below what you need it to be the last 2 years. Can we get guys comfortable now? Like, if you're not a starter, yes, you have to have that versatility, right? Like, if you're an interior guy, you got to be able to play more than left guard. If you're going to be a guard, you're going to be a left guard and a right guard, and you may have to be a center too, like as a back. But like, can we just leave Jordan Morgan alone at left tackle now? Like, he's going to be the starter there, right? Just leave him there, because when they did that for 2 or 3 weeks last year in training camp, he showed improvement and looked pretty good. And even Brian Gutekunst after the season ended, he said, yeah, we could have started him there, but we had injuries at other positions, which was actual BS because they didn't have it yet. And I think the real reason was, one, they didn't want to displace Walker and sit him on the bench because there was nowhere else to play him. And they knew that they were going to get a draft pick for Walker at the end of the year when he walked away. And they just weren't ready to make that change yet. So, like, can we just leave Jordan Morgan at left tackle now and be your left tackle? Can we not move Anthony Belton around? Like, if he's going to be your guard, let him be a guard. I know he was a tackle, but you made that switch last season. So just leave him there and let him have a full off season at right guard to learn the position because he needs to get a lot better. He really needs competition. I don't think they're going to give him true competition because he was a second-round pick. They want to develop him. So fine, but just give him every snap possible at right guard. And it'll be interesting because Zach Tom's injury, we probably won't see him until sometime in training camp. So then who are you going to play at right tackle? They put Belton out there. Like, did they start playing musical chairs? And it should be like, no, just let Darian Kennard or whoever you may draft be your right tackle. Leave Belton where he's at. Leave Sean Ryan where he's at. Leave Jordan Morgan where he's at, and let these guys gel together and get the reps they need at positions that are either new to them with Belton. Ryan's still a new center. He played 9 games or whatever it was there. And Morgan hasn't been an NFL left tackle too much. So, like, let them just play those positions. And your reserve guys, Darian Kennard, he can be a guard. He can be a tackle, a swing guy. Travis Glover, if he comes back from his injury, whoever they end up drafting or bringing in, like, let those guys be your versatile guys. But, like, can you just say these are our 5 friggin' guys and let them play their spots and stop the whole dance of, like, we're gonna play these guys all over and we're gonna try them at all these positions and we're gonna play our best 5. Just have your best 5 and have it set. And if they're not good enough, then somebody else needs to fill in. But don't play musical chairs with them. Let them get comfortable at their positions and have an off season to do that. Because maybe that's what they need is increased reps and all those opportunities that they're going to get through OTAs and mini camp and training camp to improve.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it when it comes to the backups. Like if you're, drafting on day 3, bringing in some
Sure.
depth pieces, yeah, bring me some guys that can play multiple positions and give them a better chance of making the team or whatever it may be. But you can't do that with every starting O-line position. And then that's what they seem to have gotten themselves into. Hopefully they are trying to reverse that trend a little bit. But yeah, that's the part that irritated me a little bit. And I do want to just I know that there's a lot. It's kind of fun to hate on Aaron Banks' season. Oh, he sucked. He was terrible. I wanted to pull up his PFF grades because that at least gives us some objective reference, not end all be all. I think the problem with him was he was inconsistent because he's got some elite games on here with elite PFF grades, and including he had a 73-7 in that last game against the Bears. He played very well, did very well in pass protection and run protection. So the problem is, he's also got games on here in the 30s and 40s. So you can't be that high and low. And that's where I think the Packers probably assume the guy that they're getting should be closer to the high end of that spectrum and get rid of some of these low games. And then you got to wonder these bad grade games, how much of those are because of injury, how much of those are because of he didn't play out of position. He only played at left tackles or left guard, excuse me.
Right.
So he didn't have as much of the musical chairs. So that's not even much of an excuse for him. So yeah, I just that's where I start wondering, like, all right, they must expect that top end of his spectrum where he's having elite games and elite performances to be more of the norm of his play. He wasn't terrible all season, even in, the games where he wasn't elite. He had some good games. Pittsburgh looked like he graded
Yeah.
well. That's 64 snaps, 55 snaps against the Giants, and he had an 83 grade. He the first game against Chicago, the first one, he had a 64. It's not bad. 81 in pass blocking. So he did great in pass blocking on 53 snaps. So he had good games in there. You just got to,
It was just inconsistency.
yeah, you got to bet that he's bringing those good games the majority of the time next season. And if he doesn't, the rest of the line has to be there. And I think that's the real issue is if a guy has a bad day, fine, but you've got to be able to compensate for that with the rest of the group. And I think that's where they didn't do such a great job.
Right. And the guys next to Aaron Banks weren't that good. Like the center next to him, Elton Jenkins, didn't have a good year. And then they put
Right.
Sean Ryan in there, who's an inexperienced center. That's really his first time playing center in the NFL. Like, and he wasn't bad, but he was, again, Sean Ryan was inconsistent. He was up and down, but he was learning a new position on the fly there. And then to the left of Aaron Banks was Rasheed Walker, who didn't have a good year and had a really poor playoff game against the Bears, which might have cost him a lot of money in free agency.
That's what it
So,
seems like.
If it's improved play there, that can help Aaron Banks as well. So, yeah, like I know people are saying in the comments about Rasheed Walker leaving, and now you got to start Morgan. Morgan's an unknown, and yeah, he is. He's absolutely an unknown. I would just point out when David Bakhtiari's knee gave out, Rasheed Walker was an unknown. He was a 7th round pick, and he worked out pretty good for the most part. Certainly exceeded expectations as a 7th round pick.
Absolutely.
It's time for Morgan to play. Like, you're not going to have experienced backups at every position. So if player X gets hurt or is playing poorly, you can bring in like an 8-year veteran to come in there and start for you at that. But like you don't have that. Nobody has that at every position. They drafted Jordan Morgan in the first round. It's time for him to play and be your left tackle and show what he can do. Is it a risk? Sure, it's a risk, but this guy's going into his 3rd year. it's time for him to play and to show it. Like, you got to find out about it. And if you can't do it, then you need a left tackle. But if you can, you have your guy. And that's why they drafted him. So, yeah, it's certainly a risk, but it was a risk turning things over to Jordan Love at quarterback. It's a risk doing any of this stuff in the NFL. And I don't think the play of Rasheed Walker last season is a very high bar for Jordan Morgan to get to or pass. Like, yeah, there were times in Walker's career where he was pretty solid left tackle, but I don't think 2025 was one of those seasons. I think he was very up and down as well. I think he played very poorly against the Bears in the playoff game, and it was one of the big reasons they lost that game and why their offense wasn't able to sustain in the second half. So I don't think it's asking too much for Jordan Love or Jordan Morgan to be just as good or better than what we saw from Rasheed Walker.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And again, you got to give the guy credit. He's only in his third or fourth year? I think it's his third year.
It'll
right?
be going into his third year, Morgan.
Yeah, going to his third year.
His third
You
year,
should
going into
still
his third.
see noticeable improvement as a player, as an athlete. He's a young man still. He's still figuring things out. We've said it before. As a professional, when I was 23, 24, 25 years old, I was a dummy. I didn't know anything that I didn't know, but I thought I knew everything. But so I'm not saying all these guys are like that, but there's still guys in their mid 20s and their young 20s. Like, come on, like most of us are knuckleheads at that point. And you're going to learn faster in the NFL than you probably learn in most places. So he's probably pretty mature at this point, playing a grown man's game, but he's still taking steps forward. You got to leave room for that. It's absolutely happening. You can't just assume that you know who a guy is after 1-2 seasons. It's just not how it goes. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with how things have gone. I think they've given themselves flexibility, acknowledging mistakes and cutting Hobbs, I think was a great sign for the urgency, for their own just self-awareness. Sometimes we've questioned that. Like, guys, what are you doing? Everybody's frustrations at the beginning of the offseason, not getting the coaching changes that we want and all those things. And you just kind of wonder, like, what are these guys actually looking at? So that one to me is a refreshing move to say, hey, they're self-aware, made a mistake, going to admit mistake, we're going to move on, we're going to fix it. And so the fix it part, I think, is still in motion, right? You go off and get St. Just, who, what we're talking a little bit in depth about all these guys. I just wanted to pull up his PFF card here. So last season, as far as coverage goes, he was the ninth best cover grade or ninth best graded cover corner, ninth best graded cover corner in PFF. So that's pretty damn good, man. He's a top 10 corner in coverage last season as far as his grade goes. Only really 2, maybe 3 bad games that are noteworthy on there. Otherwise, he's graded out really well. So that's a guy I think you can maybe think his best football is in front of him. There are reasons to be excited about that signing. I know we're kind of downplaying it as like maybe a depth piece, but he's not a bad player. He's definitely not a bad player. I think will be a breath of fresh air for us.
He just didn't play as many snaps last year, so that's probably part of the reason why he had a higher grade. He definitely fit the Chargers defense a lot better than he did with what they were asking him to do with the Commanders. So I would think the Packers looked at him and said, okay, we're going to do something similar with him with the Packers, and he should fit us pretty well like he did with the Chargers. And if he does, they might have got a nice player there, somebody that can challenge Valentine or Nixon for a starting job. But I think at least, like we have said, he's at least a solid depth piece and good experienced player for them. Struggled at times for sure in Washington, like never really made it work there. And the Chargers got him real cheap last offseason, but he did a really nice job for them when he was called upon. So I think there's some maybe untapped potential there. And it's just one of those guys where you may feel pretty confident about, like, if he's got to start for a few weeks, he can get the job done.
Yeah. That's the sense that I get for sure. So that overall, yeah, I think you got to be happy about where they are. They give themselves the flexibility. There's moves that can still be made. They've got cap space now, either for extensions or for another signing of a significant player, trade. So there's a lot of flexibility, and you might want to hold on to that going into the draft in case you're wanting to make moves on that draft board up or down. I don't know that because I think we probably don't want to get our hopes up. I don't know that many Packers fans are thinking that the Packers will trade to get into the first round. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that. It is something that's absolutely possible. Let's leave that out there. It's absolutely possible for them to trade in the first round. Would not be unheard of. I would think that that's far more likely than what I would have said trading for Micah Parsons would be. So that's something to maybe keep in the back of your mind. If you're wanting more moves before the draft, they may not make them to give themselves that type of flexibility on draft day to go back into the first round if there's a guy that they got to go get. Now that would be a very interesting scenario, but I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, you never know. Goody's surprised us plenty of times before. I don't think that's the likely path. I think that's a small chance, but
Wouldn't call it likely.
maybe. Yeah. No, I know you didn't. Yeah, I mean, you never know. He could do that. I think I like who they've brought in. I think it makes sense, but I really think that they still need to add a nose tackle, a veteran nose tackle, whether that's before the draft, after the draft, whatever it may be. I think that's the one position that's pretty glaring right now because Hargrave isn't that kind of guy. Like he's an up the field. You probably want him playing a similar style as what Devontae Wyatt gives you. I don't know who's going to be out there to stop the run for him inside. Like that's not what Wyatt does best. That's not what Hargrave does best. It's not what Brooks does best. And Nazir Stackhouse didn't do much for you as a rookie. So to me, if they can add a nose tackle, that would be huge. I certainly expect them to take at least one defensive tackle in the draft. But to add, a veteran at nose tackle, then again, it doesn't box them into taking that guy right away. Like you can, if somebody's there for you at 52, great. If he's not, then you can wait because you're already bringing a veteran. But that's the one glaring position that I really think they need to address, hopefully before the draft. And then you can say like, yeah, if somebody else shakes loose through a trade or gets cut loose, whether that's a cornerback, whether that's pass rusher like Josh Sweat, that rumor's out there, a depth offensive lineman that can, maybe be a swing interior guy for you or swing tackle, sure, add it. But I really think the glaring spot right now is nose tackle, and I'm hoping they do something. There's not much out there in free agency, so this may be something where you wait for somebody who gets cut or you have to make a trade. And I don't think they are going to want to give up much in draft capital just because you're missing a first-round pick this year. You only have 7 picks as it is this year. No first next year. I know they're going to get the 4 comp picks right now. But I think if they were to make a trade, it's going to be one of those like give up a 6th or 7th rounder or do some kind of like late pick swap where you give them a 6, but you get back a player in a 7, something like that. But that's the position nose tackle that I really think they need to address. And I'm hoping something breaks loose there before the draft that they can bring somebody in because that's a strong position in need right now.
Well, and again, we don't know what they think about this draft class, but from my opinion, it is very strong at the nose tackle position. There's a lot of big beef in this draft. A lot of dudes that like to stop the run. I got to talk to a few of them at the Shrine Bowl, and their comments were very similar. I'm good at stopping the run. I'm going to stop the run. That is what they said translated to the NFL, the best part of their game. So that may be a thing where they're sitting there going, yeah, we still got to find that guy. They may be assuming that guy is in the draft. I would also say, and our Showers pointed out, big costs to get from 52 back in the first. Yes, it is. But you just never know. I mean, Jerry Jones is always out there, man. And there's more than one of them. There's more than one GM out there waiting to get screwed. So you just never know. That's why I say I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibilities. We certainly agree it's not the most likely outcome, but possible. And then Chris, the casual in, we fence for life. I see you, man. He says, what about Diggs? Yeah, Diggs is one that seems like would make a lot of sense. Seems like they could get him on a prove-it deal, low salary for 1 year. Seems like he likes Green Bay. He had good things to say about it. Sounded like he wanted to be back. He's obviously got a relationship with Micah. So there's a lot there, I think, tying him to Green Bay. What I would say is, again, I think they're waiting to see how the draft goes, because this is a very good group of corners in this draft. It's deep. If they come out of this draft with 2 to 3 guys, Diggs isn't coming in.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring that guy in. You already got St. Juste as sort of your, like, your stabilizer at the position, if you will. And I think now what they're trying to do around that move and the rest of the room, because you got Valentine still. I know how we all feel about Nixon, but as far as St. Juste, Valentine, Nixon, that's a workable starting three, CB 1 through 3. It's not your ideal group, but it's certainly not the end of the world if you go into the season with those guys. So beyond that, what you're trying to do in the draft, I think, is find, some pieces of the future, some guys with higher upside. Sometimes those guys come in day one and they're ready to be CB1, CB2. They're banging down the door for snaps. So you have to leave room for that. So I don't think you'll see Diggs come in until after the draft, but I would say that I would put that as a pretty likely move if they don't get what they want out of the draft.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's more likely, is that they wait and see what they get in the draft. And if they only get one corner, or if, that corner they get is a third day guy, they maybe revisit Diggs and bring him in, because I would think at this point he's going to be really cheap to sign, because he's coming off of not being a good or healthy player in Dallas, right? Like, he hasn't been productive for a couple of years now. And I know we're only in the second week of free agency, but the contracts are getting
Uh-oh. Did I lose you, Tim? Guys, did we lose Tim, or did y'all lose me? What happened here? All right. I don't know if we lost Tim or if y'all lost me, but I'm gonna keep us going just in case. It looks like we might have lost Tim, so sorry for the dead air, guys. But hey, our friend Daryl here, you got a good one. There we go. Gannon was the reason why Hargrave chose Green Bay. He loved playing for him. I like that, and I think that that's a great sign. That's not, whenever they brought in Gannon, I was a little critical of, because you got these video clips of him looking like a dork and, just not great, right? Obviously very small snapshots and a large career. But when you see a guy like Hargrave, who's obviously a good player, been in the league for a while, played on some great teams, when he's that I mean, it was quick. When he was let go, it was quick. He's like, I'm going to Green Bay. It didn't seem like there was much of a question about it. I think that that's absolutely a credit to Gannon and his relationship and his belief in Gannon as a coach. So good to see you.
That's what
Daryl.
he said.
Glad you're with us, brother. But
Yeah, I
good
mean,
call out there. And it looks like we might have lost
eh,
both of us there for a second, but we're here again. We're
we're
back.
back.
Tim's back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a good call out about Hargrave, and that's what he said too after he signed, was like, Gannon was the reason why he came to Green Bay, because of the success he had with him in Philadelphia, and wants to play for him again. And even Zaire Franklin shouted out Gannon too, and Gannon was just like a defensive backs coach or whatever he was with the Colts, but Franklin said he really liked him, and they even kept in touch as Gannon's gone on to Philly and Arizona. So he was really looking forward to him. So yeah, there's a couple players right there vouching for Gannon, which is a good sign. And hopefully, all the current players will be too, once he gets his hands on them and starts coaching them up.
Yeah, yeah. And, so it's signs of very, very encouraging signs there. Signs of positive relationship, and it was easy to make fun of Gannon whenever they brought him in, and again the videos and the clips and everything. But when you've got legitimate guys speaking up, and not only speaking up but showing you with their feet that they want to play for this guy, that's a great sign. So I will certainly say I would love to be wrong about my initial impressions of that hire. And just give me all those words to eat, extra crispy. I'll take them all. But yeah, so and then Chris the Casual Hens got us with Josh Sweat might want to be in GB2. Yeah, he's got to be traded, so it's a whole different situation. But yeah, I mean, like, if he wants that, it's a great sign. Great sign that you got the right DC.
That's the weird rumor. I don't know. Like, I haven't seen it reported by anyone like on a national basis or anything like that. But apparently, it was somebody who, I don't know if he's a podcaster or what he does down there in Arizona covering the Cardinals, said that Gannon got fired and Sweat requested a trade. I don't know if that's legit. Again, like,
Sheesh.
I haven't seen anyone else report it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But he did play for Gannon in Philly, signed their last offseason as a free agent with Gannon. Now Gannon's not there. Maybe Sweat does want out. And I would be all for that in Green Bay. Like, I know they'd have to make it work with his contract. I don't know what the compensation would be. I don't think it would be much. Like, the Packers don't have a first-round pick, but you're not giving up a first-round pick for Josh Sweat. I don't know what, like, the Cardinals would want for him. That would be the big question. But if it's a reasonable price, I would absolutely do that because, again, like, you can't have enough pass rushers. And I would feel a lot better with Sweat starting the season. You know, if Parsons is out the first 3 or 4 weeks, having Sweat with Van Ness and Sorrell and Oliver and Bretton Cox, that would make me feel so much more confident than what they currently have right now. And then once Parsons is back healthy, having Parsons and Sweat on opposite sides, that'd be a pretty damn good pass rush to have.
That'd be a lot of fun. And then, you get a young LVN take another step. Now you're really having a lot of fun. So definitely some things that we can hope for there. You just never know. That might be one of those things that transpires on draft day. It might drag out like it did with Micah Parsons and the Cowboys all the way to training camp. You just never know. But it is good to see that these players who have played for Gannon not only speak highly of him, but want to play for him. It's very visible that these guys want to play for him and they're good players. Again, pointing out that Franklin's, leadership got him elected to the board of the Players Association, to represent the players. So those are all good signs. Very, very good signs that maybe us fans, we're not always right. We're right a lot of the times. We're right a lot. We are. And we should be given credit for that. But we're not always right. We don't always have all the information. We don't always have the whole equation. We got to admit that. But yeah, so let's take a peek into the future here a little bit. Obviously not spending a ton of time on these positions because they're not that important to the Packers in this draft. We'll just be honest with it. So we'll start with the running backs. The running back prospects for the 2026 NFL draft. Obviously headlined by Jeremiah Love, running back from Notre Dame. He will not be drafted by the Packers or anywhere close to it. So we really don't need to spend a whole lot of time on him. He's very good at running back. NFL's got, I think they're NFL.com. Somebody's comp, maybe it's PFF. Somebody's comp of him is Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that's pretty fair. An electric athlete. He can take it to the house. He's fast. You saw his 4.36 40. So Jeremiah Love is awesome running back, and he's not going to be a Packer. So we can just check that box. But after that, pretty much every running back prospect after Jeremiah Love has a shot, I think, of falling to the Packers for them to at least pass on. I don't suspect they will take running back with pick number 52. I've been wrong before. What do you think, Tim? Do you think they might have a running back as BPA at 52?
No, I would be really surprised there. It wouldn't surprise me if they take one in the draft at all. And certainly if they don't, they're going to hit undrafted free agency pretty hard because they could use another back. Chris Brooks will be back. We know that. We know Josh Jacobs is there. We don't know if we'll get anything out of Marshawn Lloyd, and Emmanuel Wilson's off to Seattle. So, like, there's definitely a need there. They could go. I mean, look, we've been shocked plenty of times with what they do. You could do that in the second round, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. But a third day back, yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely possible. Maybe very likely that they do that to address not only the immediate need for another back, but Jacobs will be going in, he's going into his third year of his contract, third year of a 4-year contract. So, and he's not old, but running back standards and the wear and tear on him, he's he's getting older. He's getting wear on the tires. So you got to address that need as well. And unfortunately, we, have had 2 years of injuries for Marshawn Lloyd, after they spent a 3rd-round pick on him. So you can't count on him. But I think 52 is a little too early, and I just don't think after Jeremiah Love, I don't think it's a very good running back class. Jeremiah Love is a stud, and he may be a top 10 pick. He's certainly a 1st-round pick. He's awesome, incredible back. But after that, I think it's average, maybe a little below average. There's not a whole lot of guys that excite me, but I definitely can see them possibly taking a guy on day 3.
Absolutely. I could see them taking a guy on day 3. Yeah, because to your point, and they do this, they know that Josh Jacobs is his time with Green Bay is shorter than it is long. They're not going to sign him to another contract, I don't think. I'd be very surprised if they did. Now he goes off and has a phenomenal season this year and just physically looks as good as ever. Maybe we're wrong and they'll do another contract there. But I think what you have to be planning for this offseason, at least, is the more likely scenario, which he's not, right, back with the team maybe after next season or the season after that. So you will need at least somebody coming in that could potentially be your back of the future there. I don't know if I agree that I don't think it's a good class. I will say it lacks star power, but I do think that there's some good value down there in day 3. And that's really all you need right now. You're not trying to draft the Jeremiah Love, right, or the Saquon Barkley. You're trying to draft a guy like an Aaron Jones, right? You're trying to find that guy that maybe is in that day 3 category, but has the potential to be your guy, right? And that's probably a character thing more than anything, because all these guys are great athletes. This day and age, your athleticism really doesn't separate you as much as it used to. It used to be kind of rare to see a 4.4 guy. And now it's like we've gotten desensitized to seeing these 4.4 speeds. It's like, guys, 4.4 is really fast. It's really fast. So the fact that we're like looking at 4.4 guys like, you're all right. It just tells you like the athleticism is through the roof on a lot of these guys. The one that I think has gotten a lot of attention from his combine workout, Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas. He kind of fits that mold. And I would compare him to Isaac Guerendo from a few years ago. And Wisconsin fans will know that name because he was a Badger and then transferred to, I believe it was Louisville for his last season, and then had a really good senior season and went to the combine and tested out of the gym. I think he ran like a 4.3 at 225 or 230. So very similar athletic specimen to Mike Washington. That's one that I think if the Packers do go off and get him, he could be fun, man, because he's fast. Daryl nailed it. He ran a 4.33, I guess, which is a low 4.3. That's fast, man. That's really fast. And he's 6'2", 228, almost 230. That kind of speed at that size is just nuts. Absolutely nuts. But that type of athleticism doesn't always play out the way you'd think it would. Like, it wouldn't, or, it should in Madden, right? If you're going to get that 98 speed running back in Madden who's 230 pounds, you should be able to truck and run your way to the touchdown almost every play. But that's not how the NFL works. So he's one to keep an eye on. PFF has him at 71 overall. I think if he slides into round 3, he definitely could be a potential pick in the 3rd round for the Packers. Just the size and athleticism. I've watched some of his tape, not a ton of it. If anything, I'd probably say his balance could improve. His vision's pretty good. But yeah, overall, he's a raw guy. Like, he's got one season at Arkansas, and before that, he was at Buffalo. I think there might have been a 3rd team between those two. But either way, he's an interesting athlete, interesting player coming out. There was one thing. I got to go back and find his stats. Here we go. Yeah. No, it wasn't him. It was the other Notre Dame running back. We'll move on to that. But yeah, Mike Washington, interesting athlete. Not sure, because he kind of came out of nowhere. he had an impressive season at Arkansas, but he didn't, blow the doors off anybody. 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6.4 yards per carry. Just an interesting guy. So one to keep an eye on for athleticism alone. But the other one who's up there that it maybe has more question marks than answers is the second running back out of Notre Dame, Jadarian Price. And that one, to me, he obviously is behind Jeremiah Love, so you're going to be limited. But I wanted to go and see, all right, well, what's the difference, right? You watch two running backs run behind the same O-line in the same system. It's a great opportunity to compare the two and, see why one is better than the other and what one does better than the other. Jadarian Price has elite vision, and his vision might be better than Jeremiah Love's. And one stat that can point to that got my attention is his return game. So this is where, if you're going to get a surprise running back pick at 52, it might be Jadarian Price. This guy's got a few kickoff returns in his repertoire. He in 2023 had one for 99 yards. In 2025, he had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. Longest one was 100 yards. So that's an interesting thing. Now, I point to that because another player has really, really gained a lot of stock, or his stock has gone up, maybe I should say, because of that. And we talked a little bit about him last week. Wetchen out of Iowa. He, as a receiver, you look at his stats and you're like, so he's going into real estate, huh? But when you look at his return stats, you're like, wait a second, is this Devin Hester? Who is this guy? And he was at the Shrine Bowl. I got a chance to stand directly behind him in the back of the end zone when he returned one of his kicks. He almost broke it for a touchdown. It's his vision. That's the difference to me in these guys who are good returners or great returners. It helps to be an elite athlete, but you don't have to be an elite athlete to be an elite returner. Your vision, it's being able to see how your block's set up and how do you manipulate your blockers into blocks to get to where you want to go and seal yourself an edge. Some guys have it and some guys don't. Jadarian Price taking 2 touchdowns back last season, that's getting a lot more scouts' attention than I think fans. So just something to be aware of. That's a big deal, I think, to a lot of scouts. That can get guys a lot of attention, being good at that, especially this day and age in the NFL where you're still figuring out what's going to work. That guy is one to watch. And if he is the pick at 52, because PFF has him rated at 56 overall, so he's at least in that neighborhood. I could see fans being mad about that. We don't need a running back. That's overdrafting. But there is a reason. If you go running back, and in particular that young man at 52, there is a reason, and my money would be on the return game. But the return game, again, is an indicator of his vision, elite vision. You watch him run. He is a master at setting up his blocks. Very, very good at squeezing through the small spaces. That's something that Aaron Jones was really, really good at. So that's one to watch. Not the athlete that Jeremiah Love is, and that kind of shows up everywhere. He's a good athlete, and that's where I kind of got the attitude of we're being desensitized to these 4.4 athletes. He's a good athlete. I think he ran a 4.5 flat, something like that at the combine. So very good speed there for a running back. You're not mad about that at all. But he just didn't do anything elite. It's not like he had a 40-inch vertical or a 4.3 40 or anything like that. He's just a very good athlete, whereas Jeremiah Love is an elite athlete. With the low 4.3 40, I think he jumped out of the gym, all of that. He's an elite athlete. You see it on the tape. He would rather jump over a defender than truck them, and he's good at it. So you can't blame him. But that's the difference between the two. I can't speak to Love's vision because he's had such a good year. He's such a great running back. I don't think he needs to rely on his vision as much as a lesser athlete. And it's hard to say that because Price is still a great athlete, would need to rely on his vision. But that's one that's going to be sneaky. He's going to be a sneaky pick, and he's going to be a good player in the NFL because of that vision. You just can't teach it. And I think our Showers there, he said he agrees, born, not made. Vision is not something you can teach. You can try as much as you want. You can't do it. And I Don't know how to explain it, but it's a feel thing, and some guys got it, and you can see it. And like Devin Hester had it. But anyway, so the only other one that, there's plenty of running backs. We're not just going to drive down the list here. Obviously, we're getting late in the pod. The only other one that I wanted to call out, and this is a guy that I interviewed at the Shrine Bowl, and he actually had a very good Shrine Bowl performance in the game, is Dean Connors, running back out of Houston. Now, he is looking like a day 3, potentially undrafted free agent type guy as far as PFF has him rated. He's down near 300. But he's a solid player. Watching him at the Shrine Bowl, he's got a lot of respect from his teammates. He played very well in that game. Somebody else who played very well in that game last year was Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. We saw how that translated into the NFL for him in his rookie year. He had a solid rookie year, some great performances. So Dean Connors is one to keep an eye out for. Heck of a guy, very high character guy. He's, military family. He's moved around a lot. He's adaptable, but just an interesting prospect to me. And again, he looks like a day 3 guy. There's a lot of names on this list, but a guy who plays well in a Shrine Bowl or a Senior Bowl type setting is one to keep an eye on, because you may not think he's as exciting, being a running back from Houston. Maybe he didn't have, crazy stats. What were his stats last season? I don't know what his stats were last season. It's just not a very exciting prospect when we're talking about guys running 4.3s and, ran for crazy amount of yards last season and all sorts of these things. But when you're talking about what teams are looking for in the NFL, I think he's got a lot of it. I think he's a high character dude that works really hard. And when he goes on the field, he's very physical and relentless is a good way to put it. The guy just goes. He turns it on. He goes. He's going to hit you hard. It's going to be a long day for you going against him. It's kind of the way I could put it. So just wanted to call out. Could be an interesting special teams pick. Usually that range and that type of guy is going to spend some time on special teams in the NFL. And you can go see our interview with him. It's on our Twitter, Pack Weekly Pod. So you can check that out. But cool dude. So any comments on the running back position, Tim? I know you know about the guys out of Penn State. Any others that got your attention?
Well, I'll just talk on the Penn State guys since you brought them up. So there's 2 of them that are going to be drafted: Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. Where they go, it's hard to pinpoint. I think one of them may go 3rd round. The other one's going to go day 3. Both had really productive careers with Penn State. They're both bigger backs. Katron Allen's the more physical back, whereas Singleton's definitely the faster, like, home run hitter. Katron Allen was just consistent throughout his time at Penn State, like was consistently productive. Whereas Singleton was, I don't want to knock him. He was consistent too up until 2025. But he was more the home run hitter. He was more the big play guy, hit a seam and he could go, he could take 160 yards. I think he had a kick return or 2 for touchdowns as well at Penn State. So he's another guy with kick return potential, which, if the Packers drafted him, he would never return kicks. But for any other team, he's got that potential. And then for whatever reason, 2025 Singleton had a really disappointing year, and it's hard to pinpoint why. Katron Allen was much better in 2025. They were both there all year. They were both healthy all year. And for whatever reason, Singleton just didn't have a big season. And him and Allen could have came out after 24. They both decided to come back, which was surprising, thinking that they were going to, have big productive years, maybe bump up their draft status. And it certainly helped for Katron Allen because he had a really good 2025. He was their best offensive player in 2025. But Singleton was disappointing, and I'm not sure why. I think at times he certainly doesn't run with as much physicality as Allen does, even though they're not much different size-wise. Allen is much more physical. And I think Singleton also struggles at times with vision. Like if the hole's there in front of him, he will hit it and he can take it the distance no matter where they are on the field. He can take it into the end zone. But if it's not there, I think he struggles to find his cutback lanes. He struggles to make positive yardage. Allen is more of, he's probably more in line with what the Packers already have in that he's not going to be this big play, special kind of back who could be, explosive play after explosive play, but he could be a really nice, solid running back for you who can run through guys and make some yardage on his own when it's not blocked for him, just because he can break tackles and run over defenders. So I think there's a lot of risk with Singleton. He's also hurt I believe it was his foot or his ankle at the Senior Bowl, so he hasn't tested, and I don't think he'll test before the draft. Maybe he will right before the draft. Singleton's big, and he's if he was going to test, his numbers would be great because he can fly. But there's a lot of risk in him, just based on what we saw in 2025 and having a down year. I think Allen's more of a back where you can look at and be like, all right, I know what he's going to be able to do. Whereas Singleton, you would look at and be like, well, he probably has this in him, but I just don't know if he'll ever be that guy. And he could be a guy that's out of the league or, never really has a prominent role in the league. Whereas Allen may have the longer kind of career. Maybe he's not ever a star back or anything like that, but he's just consistent. I like them both. And I hope Singleton can find his game and find that consistency. Maybe it's getting in the right system in the pros. Maybe it's a coaching thing. Because if he hits his full potential, he could be a damn good back. He could be a number one back and one of the big play threat backs in the NFL. I like him a lot. It's just the 2025 season was such a downer for him that it would scare me off. I could see the Packers liking him potentially, but I think that if between the two of them, Allen would be more their type than Singleton right now. But they're both absolutely NFL backs. I think, are they ever, no doubt about it, starting pro ball kind of running backs? Probably not, but I think they both can have solid careers, and I like them both. But if for a Packer standpoint, I think Katron Allen would be the more likely of the two to be drafted by them.
Yeah, certainly interesting. We'll see whether the Packers value that upside or the production, because that seems to be kind of the divide between the two there. But yeah, so that's kind of a quick buzz over the running back position here. Again, we didn't spend a lot of time on this because I don't think it's going to be a big priority for the Packers. Doesn't seem like it needs to be. You said it, Tim. They brought back Chris Brooks, re-signed him. I love that re-signing. Excellent pass protector, and when he had the ball in his hands, he could make something happen with it. So, not a bad one to have as your RB2. And then you really are going to have an opportunity to add value at the running back position throughout the draft. And again, it may not be a very exciting class as far as like the names that are in it and what they've accomplished. I mean, obviously at the top, Jeremiah Love is quite exciting, but after that, there's definitely a lot to wonder about. And I personally, again, believe that you're going to find some decent value in the running back position all the way through day 3. But it's not something that you get really excited about. Those aren't the things that we're really trying to dive into and spend a lot of time on. And same thing with the quarterback position. Now, we can do a quick buzz over this because this year we can pretty well say the quarterback position is not as good as it usually is. You've got your clear-cut favorite in Fernando Mendoza. And then after that, you really don't have anybody that you should be talking about in the first round. Obviously, you will because that's how teams operate. If you need a quarterback, you go get it, whether it's the right value or not. So you got Ty Simpson and Garrett Nussmeier that are, kind of up there. Could get overdrafted in the first or second round. I don't know if Nussmeier could go in the first. Ty Simpson might find his way in the first, but either way, then after that, there's some decent value picks, I think, for quarterback. Drew Aller, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, Jalen Daniels, Taylor Green. Though that tier there of quarterbacks, none of those guys I think are competing for a starting job next year, but they've all got tools. They've all seen success at the college level to some extent. There's a lot of potential there for backup, QB2, career QB2 type guys. Not that I'm trying to limit anybody to that, but there's nobody there that's solving your quarterback position next season. We'll say that. And then beyond that, I know there's some attention on Cole Payton, the North Dakota State quarterback. that's an interesting one. You know, his PFF grade last season, 95.9. First, the highest graded quarterback on PFF. Again, PFF's not it's not the gospel, but it's something. He's 6'3", 233, so he's a big dude. Played a lot of football. He's a senior. You know, that's one that's interesting. You got to wonder if that guy is at a Power 5 school or SEC school or something like that, if he's higher on this list. I have not watched a lot of him, but I will go back and take a look to see what I see. Obviously, there is a receiver coming out of North Dakota State that a lot of people are fond of right now. So we'll check that out too. But yeah, I think Cole Payton is an interesting one. That's one that, you know, if the Packers went off and found him in like the 5th round or something like that, 6th round as your QB2 project, I wouldn't be mad about that. That may be a very nice value pick for them. And then, you know, there's definitely some names further down the list, but they're all going to be day 3 type guys. And, you know, they were fun in college, but I just don't know how good these guys are going to be in the pros. Guys like a Diego Pavia, you know, he's all of 5'9" when he's wearing shoes. So there's just not a whole lot of fun stuff to talk about with the quarterback positions. A lot of depth guys, day 3 guys that, the Packers might have a shot at, but you know, I don't think anybody's getting excited about it. I don't know. What do
No,
you think?
there's really it's not a good draft for quarterbacks, and I think the Packers right now are okay. Like if they don't get their guy in the draft that they like, because they already have Desmond Ritter, and yeah, I mean he's not great, but he could be a decent backup quarterback for you. And he's a veteran who's played, and you can get by with Desmond Ritter. And they added Kyle McCord after the season ended. He was a 6th-round pick last year from Syracuse. He's another guy. Maybe they can develop him. Maybe he's the 3rd quarterback on the practice squad. So, like, if there's somebody they like, I could see them taking somebody on day 3. If there's not, then I expect them to bring in an undrafted free agent, compete with McCord. Cole Payton's a nice one. He's interesting. I know Tylen Green from Arkansas. A lot of people like him. He's got size and he had great testing numbers. I'm not really into what quarterbacks run or what their testing numbers are at the combine, but he got a lot of buzz coming out of the combine. He's a project, but he certainly's got the size and a lot of tools and skills, but he's a major project. But maybe they like him. Maybe they like the traits, and he's somebody they think they can bring in and groom and you know, in that kind of Malik Willis mold. I think he could be a possibility. And then Sawyer Robertson from Baylor's another one who's a late round guy. He's played some good ball at Baylor, has starting experience. He's been around for a little bit. I could see them liking him as well. But it's not a great draft for quarterbacks. I would be totally fine if they sit it out and just ride with Ritter next year and maybe McCord on the practice squad or an undrafted guy on the practice squad, whoever it may be that they can find and develop. Certainly they could draft somebody. It wouldn't surprise me. We've seen them do it with Clifford. We saw them do it with Michael Pratt recently. So they've been trying to draft that position and develop a guy behind Jordan Love. They could do it again, but I don't think right now in this situation, like they have to, because they have Ritter and because they have McCord, and it's not a good draft for that anyway. So they sit it out. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I don't think that there's anybody in this draft where you're like, oh man, it could be the QB of the future. You know, I could think of other positions that I'd rather take another depth shot at before I'd rather them go find a quarterback. But again, you know, there's going to be some potential for this kind of stuff. And as I'm just kind of jumping back to take a closer look at Cole Payton. You know, his completion percentages, and this is one that I usually start with, is 72. 72 is pretty damn good in 2025. Fernando Mendoza had the same completion percentage. So, you know, top overall pick in the draft. Not bad. Now, again, it's North Dakota State. We all get that. But yeah, it's throwing for 2,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Those are kind of low numbers for touchdowns. I mean, I would think you're throwing for more than that, but I believe they run the ball a lot. So that makes a lot of sense. And he actually has some pretty decent rushing stats here, it looks like. 777 rushing yards in 2025 for 5.7 yards a carry and 13 touchdowns on the ground. So he almost had as many rushing touchdowns as he did passing touchdowns in 2025. That actually may be something that's working against him. I'd have to go back and look to see what they're doing. But yeah, that's so Cole Payton's one that he could be, like maybe like a fun. Who was the one that went down to the Saints after the Packers drafted him? The quarterback. He ran the ball a lot.
Taysom Hill.
He could be like a fun Taysom Hill type player, maybe, because he's got some size to him. He could maybe like play some H back for you and blend in, and every now and then be a quarterback. But yeah, so that's I don't know. Oh, we still got the banner up for running backs. We're talking about quarterbacks. Those are, that's kind of the general synopsis of the quarterback position, though. In in this draft class, it's not great. Everybody agrees Fernando Mendoza is pretty damn good. I don't think there's much to second guess about him going to the NFL. I think he's going to be pretty good. We'll see how he does with all the pressure and all of that. But after that, yeah, you sit this one out. I'm cool with it. That's really, I guess, what it would come down to. Taylor Green, I would like to at least comment on him. He's a hell of an athlete, hell of he's just got massive size, 6'6". He's running the 4.36. You're going to find a way to use him. Maybe he does the Terrell Pryor path and actually becomes a receiver and does well with that. But I got to see him as a freshman in high school. He seems like a super mature young man. Nobody is describing freshmen in high school as mature, but stepping in and playing the way that he did as a freshman in high school, I was very impressed with it from the first time I ever saw him. And so his career in college has not been a surprise to me. And I do think that he's got what it takes between the ears to make it in the NFL. So we'll see what his trajectory or where his trajectory takes him. But yeah, so man, that's it. We might touch on quarterbacks and running backs a little bit as we cover the rest of these positions for the draft. And if you guys ever just got to know or want to bring somebody up to talk about, I'm sure we can squeeze it in. But we put these guys at the front for a reason. This is not something that we think the Packers are prioritizing this year. So we touched on them a little bit. We could pack that away. Next week, Tim, what should we do next week? We want to jump into the defensive side of things next week.
Yeah, I guess we could do that.
Linebackers and safeties.
Yeah, we can hit linebackers and safeties.
Okay, next week
there's some linebackers out there.
Yes, there's some fun guys to talk about in these groups. Obviously, some of them will not be taken anywhere near where the Packers will be picking, but others will. And there's some very, very interesting things to speak about in these position groups. So next week, come on back. Linebackers and safeties, we'll run through and break down those prospects at those positions, see who we think might be of interest to the Packers and where they could be going at those positions, if anywhere. And, maybe we'll have some more transactional news to talk about. We might get another free agent, another trade. You just never know. There could be stuff cooking up, but usually the stuff that happens, we don't hear about it before it happens. So the fact that things have been quiet the last few days maybe means something's happening. So just keep your ears open, be ready, keep the Twitter page up and refreshed. But if y'all had fun with us tonight, go ahead and spike that like button for us. And if you're not watching on YouTube, jump on over to YouTube, type in Packers Talk Network, subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out a lot. And if you love it, bring a friend. Tell a friend about the pod, bring them to hang out, talk some Pack. Maybe your friend is a Bears fan and they just need to be set straight on some things. Bring the Bears fans. We like to mess with them too. You Vikings fans and Lions fans, I don't know. I sometimes feel bad for picking on you, but all NFC North rivals are welcome. We do welcome the trash talk in the comments, and certainly appreciate y'all that are hanging out with us every week in the comments, subscribing and all of that. Love you guys, and look forward to hanging out with you next week on the Pack Weekly Pod. And of course, as always, go Pack, go.